Hamjambo, this is Ruth Kamau, and welcome to Wasafiri Africa, where we celebrate Africa and things African. The University of Witwatersrand, Johannesburg, known as Wits University, is a top-tier multi-campus public research university founded in 1922. Covering 400 acres in Braamfontein and Parktown, Wits University has 11 libraries and 18 halls of residence, the latter holding 15% of its approximately 40,000 student population. Through the Africa Engineering and Technology Network, Afretec, Wits has a strong partnership with various universities in Africa. Twendeni, Africa is ready. Phala Ookeditse holds a Master's in Dramatic Arts from the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg and is a multi-award-winning storyteller in the form of a playwright, theatre maker and director. His works champion emotional and psychologically stimulating storytelling as a uniquely African aesthetic and has won awards in South Africa, the United States, Czech Republic and Australia. Tony Bonani Miyambo is also an alumni of the University of Witwatersrand's Dramatic Arts program and is a multifaceted creative professional with a passion for storytelling and performance. He is renowned in the creative industry as a talented actor, producer, and independent theatre maker. His impressive body of work includes acclaimed and award-winning solo performances, not least of them Kafka's Ape, which forms the central focus of our conversation today. Through their creative production company, Phala and Tony have crafted the adaptation of A Report to an Academy by Franz Kafka into an internationally acclaimed, award-winning play. This theatrical masterpiece is Kafka's Ape. And so the question, what can an ape teach us? Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
It's my pleasure. You know what? I normally greet people in their mother tongue. All right. So, what is your mother tongue, Phala?
It's Setswana.
Setswana.
Yeah, and you said you'll have to say Dumela.
Dumela. Dumela.
Dumela or Dumelang. Dumelang is the more accepted because when you greet me, say Dumelang, it's in the plural, which means you also acknowledge my ancestors.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. See, this is what I love about Wasafiri Africa because the conversations always enrich me. I didn't even know that. So it's about the plural.
Yes.
It's about the shoulders that you stand on.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
And Tony?
I'm Tsonga, but Phala will tell you what.
Tsonga?
Yeah.
As in Tsonga.
Yeah, so my father was Tsonga, so I
okay.
identify Tsonga, but he never spoke the language to me.
Okay.
So I don't know how to speak Tsonga. So
okay.
how do you say hello in Tsonga, Phala? I like putting him under pressure.
It is so funny that he's asking me. I mean, it depends on whether you are Mifukile would be meaning how are you? I mean how did you sleep?
Mfukile.
Mifukile. Mifukenjani.
Mufukile njani.
Yeah, mifukenjani.
Mifukenjani. Okay, this is interesting because I'm Kikuyu, right? And I'm Kenyan. So I speak Kikuyu, which is my mother tongue, but we also speak Kiswahili, which is the national language. And so Wemwega means are you well? Mm-hmm. Are you well? And for us, it's like there's a lot of other words you have to say. You know how you say like that one word recognizes all this, and Fukile is yeah. I'm learning that for us we say Wemwega, and then you have to say Wakomate. So all those.
There's always a question and then an answer in African greetings.
Yes.
So the thing is that when you look at the way that perhaps the system of capitalization has done is that it has reduced them because people really don't have the time to ask you genuinely. So I remember,
which is a pity.
Yes, I remember one of the experiences when I started going to university. When people would say hello, how are you? I used to say, do you really want to know how I am, or you're just doing it as a call and response thing? Because
Yes.
in Setswana, I know when somebody asks that, it's generally because they want to know how you are.
Right.
And normally the answer will come with, telling people how you are as a person, and how the family is, and how your cattle are, and all those kind of things. So it will be a long kind of a greeting.
Yes.
So you don't say lekai, which means, how are you, if you don't mean it.
Right.
Yeah, so in English, it's a call and response. Hello, how are you? I'm fine. Hello, how are you? Even when you're not fine.
Yeah, it becomes just like a statutory response.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you know what, Tony? In my conversations, I'm finding out that one of the people I spoke to said that we are the hybrid African now, especially your generation, because sometimes it's because you have parents from different heritage, so they are both African, but maybe different parts of the continent, or even different language, okay? It's because we travel and all that, which is, Wasafiri means the travelers, okay, of Africa. So now, and then also, your parents were exposed to English, right? So my mother spoke rudimentary English, right? She went to a grade 8 education. I mean, you're talking pre-independence, 1950s, not our grade 8 now, okay? And then my dad was fluent in English, okay? So my mom used to say, when you get home, leave English in the car and then come into the house. And that's how we learned how to speak. So parents do have a role to play, absolutely, in teaching the language.
Yeah, I mean, the awkwardness, I mean, it's something I also have explored through my creative practices. The awkwardness of it is kind of, I wasn't aware of a lack and a loss until very late in kind of my adult life.
Yes.
In my 20s, when you're leaving with Wits University, where, English has been championed as the medium of instruction and of exchange. And then you come into an industry that says we want people that speak a pure Zulu or a pure Tsonga. And I'm a kind of a weird amalgamation of the township, And I also understand like my parents, the pressure on my parents' lived existence. It was because they had come to Johannesburg to make a living. They found each other, and also entering into a post-apartheid dispensation, early democracy, when we're now having access to these multiracial schools. So in their minds, it's like, giving these children access to English is giving them the best of what we have access to now. So that kind of insistence around language wasn't present in my house, and I think it's because of that. It's because my parents were busy, but also on the other hand, they felt like it's really important for them to exchange in English,
100%.
But there's a kind of intentionality that comes with all of these things that I'm learning now as an adult. And you have to be very intentional about a lot of these things.
And there's so many, your generation. I mean, my children are also mixed heritage. And when my son was younger, he was fluent. I'm talking 4 or 5 year olds, kind of 8, up to around 8. And then when we moved to Cape Town, it's like I got used to speaking English even at home because the housekeepers didn't understand any of my languages, and then we have to. So I just find it's what we are now, and there's no apologies made because it doesn't make us any less of who we are as Africans.
I mean, one of the things that if you look at it is actually what I would term, for lack of a better expression, the violence of colonization.
Right.
Because one of the things that has happened quite broadly around education and around, civilization is that the so-called civilization, and I'm not talking about here African civilization and all that the colonial civilization has been, it's part of the conquest, it's part of the colonial goal to have people speak in this language. And some of our languages have been actually taken into the periphery of education, of business, of economy, to the extent that then becomes, the language of instruction and execution of business and economy, and politics. So therefore, we find our languages on the periphery because, like Tony's rightly saying, if your parents, understand that the language that will advance your life economically, for you to participate in the economy is English, then they will try and do the best for you to get that. So one of the things that you'll get at schools, is speak English, right? So that you can perfect your English and get your English right, because your Setswana is not going to get you a job, but the English is going to get you a job. You apply in English, you apply, so that...
It's the global language.
Is the so-called global language, because then that becomes the issue. And because of that, then that's how we find ourselves. Even those of us who have been taught Setswana, and we can properly, speak Setswana, out there in the world, we find ourselves speaking a lot more English than we would, wish to speak Setswana.
What language do you think in?
I think in both.
Okay.
I think in both English and Setswana because of my upbringing.
Okay.
I am so much spiritually Setswana, and I'm a spiritual person, so I think in both. So in my intellectual mind, I intellectualize around, Setswana and English. I wouldn't say equally.
Right.
But I think in both.
They jostle. And how did you both meet? Did you meet in Johannesburg?
Yeah, we met at Wits University. We worked on a project that Phala became, is it an associate director on?
Yeah.
So that's where we first interacted, and then when Phala was thinking about his work, he then invited me to the Kafka's Ape project, which at the time was called Red Peter's Way Out, and then we embarked on that journey together. So we first worked together on somebody else's project, and then we worked together on this project for the sake of towards his masters, and then we remained friends throughout our studies, and then when we left Wits University, we said, let's go back to this thing, because we were facing a bit of frustration around what to do next, what the next creative projects would be in our professional capacity. So then it's kind of a professional relationship that's grown into a brotherhood, into a professional relationship, and now we've 4 projects in together. We've got 3 one-man shows together, and we're still trying to explore what other possibilities there are for us as Noma Yini.
So before we go into Kafka's Ape, the 3 other projects together, what are their titles?
So there's one called Erebueni, On the Shoreline.
On the Shoreline.
Which is our latest work.
Okay.
And, that is actually about a character called Miela, who's a soul collector by the shoreline, and that is in reference to a number of people that have died in the seas across the Atlantic, slave trade. And all that,
right, okay.
So
right.
So trying to find a home, because the question is, how do families find closure when their people have actually been swallowed by the sea and they had no burials and that, so that's one other work. There's another work called Commission Continue, and there's another work that we did after COVID, which was a 2-hander. It was called 14 Days, so it was just basically concentrated around just when COVID started, what were the kind of information that was being shared, and it just tells a story of two workers that got trapped in a farm, a toilet paper factory. And
I remember that was the first thing to run out in the supermarkets.
So we were speaking to some of those aspects, but for us it was much more about the human condition in that state.
Yes.
What happens in the time of disease, when disease is being announced, what happens to the human response and the human articulation about some of these things.
Right.
So we were exploring that more than just the panic around. It was like what do people stand to lose in this kind of situation? The fear mongering, the misinformation around disease. It has happened with HIV. It has happened with a lot of other diseases. To the extent that instead of us tackling the disease, we are tackling the mythologies and the myths and the stigmas and everything else that is created by this information without really getting into what the real disease is. So it's exploring the disease around the disease. So that's one other work that we.
Well, I hope I get to watch it.
Itself in the way in which the capital treats that people we see of less value. So the narrative is around two workers who are forced to work overtime in a toilet paper factory because there's a rapid rise in demand.
Toilet paper.
Phala
so it's basically blue collar worker, quote and unquote.
I wanted you to speak about Commission Continua.
Commission Continua. The second work you mentioned is our offering that kind of explores the idea of what we call commission fatigue. South Africa is a country that has had various commissions of inquiry as a way to deal with critical moments in our history and traumas, and we started to think around what would it mean to have a figure who's constantly sitting in this kind of wading through the paper bureaucracy of our country, around processes that must or give the impression that they will elicit some sort of change, but actually, we go through these processes and things stay the same. And so it's just a revolving doors of commissions of inquiry, revolving doors of issues that are never quite resolved. And so all you have to do is look around various kind of issues in South Africa, and you can see that actually the critical problem is that we haven't dealt with anything.
That provides a very good segue to Kafka's Ape in my mind, and I was enthralled. And you very generously accepted to have a conversation with me today in the studio where you're performing at the Baxter, and on the stage where this marvelous work comes to life. And when I think about what you're saying, it's like with the walking wounded. When I think of Kafka's Ape, the way he expounds his thoughts on how he sees what being man-like or human-like, means. There's a lot of walking wounded in that. There's a lot of incomplete and a lot of hurt and a lot of pain and a lot of questions. I don't know. So let's talk about Kafka's Ape now, because it's an adaptation from a report to an academy by Franz Kafka's work, which was in 1917, right? Yes. And you met with one of the adaptations, which was the Red Peter.
No, Red Peter's, that's what we called our production at the beginning.
Oh, at the beginning.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Red Peter's Way Out.
Yes.
Okay. And then now as you went along and got more intimate with the work, you settled on Kafka's Ape.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, one of the things that, about the piece, I mean, just speaking about, a woundedness and, the humans, relationship with violence, as a learned behavior, as a learned kind of a culture.
Yes.
It's one of the things that was sitting at the heart of, the beginnings of this text. Was about when you're witnessing, things around how humans are able to hurt each other, and what they continue to do, and how they perceive animals, and what happens to animals themselves around, the human behavior and how they are victims to human behavior, was at the heart of, the beginnings of, this adaptation. Because one of the things that I was looking at the beginning that got me to think about the adaptation was recognizing that there was high amounts of rape.
Okay.
Around that time. We're getting into getting ready for the World Cup and all those kind of things.
Yes, I remember that time. Yeah.
And then there was a lot of also what was happening, taking people off the streets, which was, also a possibility, showing us a possibility of what the government can do if they've got intention. There was a number of things that were happening at that time, but for me it was actually the kind of the headlines that were continuing, to instead of naming, victims, they name the perpetrator and sort of like elevate the perpetrator over the victim and all those kind of things. It made me think about a lot of stuff. But also, and that was also at the height of when, issues of human trafficking were happening. There was also, there was a few protests around, the HIV AIDS medication and other things at that time, So one of the things that I thought about was like, the story of Kafka reminded me of, an ape as a migrant and migration patterns, all those kind of things came to my mind, and that's how I thought about, okay, I would like to do this. There's a lot of engagement around, this material that, but when I read the short story, there were a few other things that I felt like I would, like to communicate using this character, because human beings often, to hold a mirror against human beings to speak to them sometimes requires a very special way that can get into their hearts and minds almost equally. And I felt the text, of Kafka as a short story carried that. But there were some other elements that I felt were quite the opposite of what I wanted to do, in the sense of like taking a very European African relationship, kind of relations or point of view. And I didn't want it to be about Europe and Africa. I wanted it to be about Africans even themselves. Within Africa, what do we do? What is our kind of conditions and living? What is our kind of woundedness? What is our kind of, how do we relate, between ourselves and animals? That is why, and I came across a story of the decimation of, apes in Gombe.
Yes.
And that became the reason why, this ape comes from Gombe.
In Tanzania.
In Tanzania, yeah. So, because those were some of the things. And also, one of the things that I was thinking about at the time was a very, glaring statistic, which I had never imagined. So, South Africa, there's a 2-week period between the start of the genocide in Rwanda and the independence of South Africa. And in Rwanda, about nearly, a million people died from the genocide.
That's right.
And then when you calculate it from independence to about, 2010, around that time, there were over about 1.8 million people who had died from violent crimes in South Africa. So the question that I also had was, who was in genocide? Were both countries in genocide? The other one was heightened because it happened, as a mass incident, at some point. But for me, it was equally, comparable. And
of course, people are dying.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
those were
certain
some of the
people
things.
are dying
But the
in
question
large
for me,
numbers.
yes, and the question for me is like, we're talking about human numbers,
Right.
but why don't we speak about animal displacement? How many animals suffered?
Yeah.
Between the borders of Rwanda and Congo, and all that. So those were
Even
some
now.
of the questions. Even now.
Yeah.
So those were some of the questions. They say, if you can't care about the animal life or our lack of care, and our violence towards ourselves makes us even care less about animals. So that was one of the things. And what is to have an animal speak back to us about that kind of experience? So that is why that resonated.
And it's so apt because I think one of the things that you mentioned, you said that one of the things about African folklore is we always use animals.
Yes.
And they tell difficult stories or they teach lessons and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
So, and I immediately thought, oh yeah, that is so true. And it becomes so apt because now this becomes an independent voice over there that is giving you a report, and you can't take it personally because it doesn't look like,
It provides that distance.
Distance, exactly. One of the things that I really enjoyed about your script is and the way that you performed, Tony, is that I completely forgot, first of all, that it was a human on stage, and that speaks to your mastery of your craft. But I also, the script was not racial to me. So I am just wondering whether you had any pushback when you started about, Kafka's Ape and you being the writers and then Tony being the player, the actor as a black man. Did you get that kind of initial pushback where people would say, I'm not going to come and watch the play that it shows a black man as an ape?
I think the irony is, well, first of all, not much pushback.
Okay, that's good.
If there's been, I wouldn't call it pushback, but I'd call it people's fears and anxiety manifesting.
Okay.
And that's always people who haven't watched the piece. And so I can't care for those people because they haven't engaged the work as far as to have a conversation within context. I had a funny experience that I was describing to Phala when I was walking here into the Baxter. A guy that I know from Joburg who's seen the show in Joburg says, "Oh, I see you're performing the Ape here in Cape Town." I was like, "Yeah, we are. We're in the studio." And he's like, "Have you had any pushback here in Cape Town?" And I was like, "No, you've seen the show. It's not a pushback show." And I started to think, why is he saying that? And I thought, well, the assumption is that there's a kind of a white sensitivity here, but also the assumption is that we must be sensitive to the fact that there are white people here in Cape Town.
You couldn't figure it out.
Because this is the same show.
Yes. He's watched it.
If you look at the full context, you've watched it.
Yes.
I've traveled it literally around the world.
Where there's a lot of white people.
More white people. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
In fact, if there's one thing that is a discomfort for me in the show is that I don't see enough people like me sitting in the audience. Although, to be honest, here in the Baxter, it's been a mixed audience.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things, but it's always kind of comes left field outside of the context of the show.
Yeah.
And for me, I always want to speak about the work in the very same way that I give that kind of space and grace to other people's work, right? Because the work must always speak.
The work must speak for itself.
So no, we haven't. I mean, I remember one incident in I think it was Grahamstown. And it was a lady of color, actually,
right,
who was just very angry that a black man used his body to explore and portray an ape. And you could see that that person couldn't get past of that image of that idea. And they didn't allow themselves to listen to the rest of the show.
Oh my gosh.
Because if you listen to the show, what you will do is understand why what you see in the first 5 minutes and that sense of discomfort that you have completely starts to melt away and you start to find empathy. And I always tell people, I mean, one of my difficulties around the show is people always highlight and compliment the performance. And that's, for me, that's a great mark of somebody who's really directed and knows the directing brilliance and the directing prowess, is that you are not seeing the mechanics of the show at work.
Yes, yeah.
You're seeing the heart of it live. And I always ask people, what makes you think that was not directed, that was not deliberate? The choice to have a black body come into the space and to agitate people in that way and to draw them out of themselves and then to make them fall in love with the character is not just a performance thing. Yes, it's a direction.
Yeah,
somebody said, and that somebody's sitting next to me,
exactly.
And he thought, with this body, in this work, in this context, what can we do? I mean, I despise Phala for this, but I also love him for it. His work over the years, with all of these years that we've been doing Kafka's Ape, is to take things away from me. And I used to hate him earlier because we used to have all sorts of elaborate things. What you see now on the stage is the drop-down version, and I still think he's going to take things away from me.
Really?
Yeah, we used to have a white wall that had 8 lights, and you could see the lighting of the evolution.
Evolution.
And we used to have it wasn't much, but it was a little bit of paint, and we used to make a scar, and we used to have a pipe, and we used to have all sorts of things that made me very happy to be an actor that has all of these
all these props.
And it's a Phala consistently just took things away.
But you know what?
And it was distilling to what it is that you are complementing. The performance, the body as a tool in space.
And it gets you to listen.
Yeah.
It gets you to listen because, once something becomes too multifaceted, there's all these things happen. Now I must pay attention to that. And then I don't hear that sentence. Now we were fixated on the performance and the lines, the language that was coming out of the story that was coming out, the words that was coming out. And I just want to go to the beginning. When we're sitting here, do you say that we are trapped in our own body? What do you say?
We're sealed in our bodies.
Sealed, that's it. We're sealed in our own bodies. And we're sitting here. So when you walk into the auditorium and you're waiting, for the performance to begin, there's this crackling, 1920s sort of kind of recording that, we are sealed in our own bodies. I won't even try and perform because, I'll do such a horrid injustice. And I was thinking of, oh my gosh, that sounds like those lobotomy sort of experiments that used to happen to try and get people to behave in a certain way, because we're sealed in our own bodies. And then in the course of the production, where Red Peter talks about the way out, we're all looking for a way out. Oh my gosh, my brain went like, that is so perfect for me. How that was so subliminally, massaged into your mind, and it primed you for the performance, so that when Red Peter comes onto the stage, you are captivated.
One of the things, as Tony was speaking, one other thing that is important, to mention equally from a performative, aspect, is that because this work belongs to Tony as it belongs to me.
100%.
And there's many other contributions performance-wise that he has made. And for me, it has been a very, kind of like rewarding experience to see the work grow. Where you see, okay, there's this, Tony wants to do that, and all I do when we talk about the work now is like, this is that, I see this, I see that, so we're at a point where our rehearsals and our notes are more about a discussion. I'm not seeing this, Tony. Yes, I see that, I can see this, I'm not seeing that. And then he goes, all right, no, because I was thinking of this. Oh, okay, but did you think about that? That's where we are in terms of how the work grows and what the work becomes, because it can never be that as a director, as an adapter, as a playwright, you confine the work to your own thinking only. Because you think, I'm not a person who believes in the elevated director, the elevated person who now has to say, make sure, no, Tony, when you get 3 downs on the line, when you get to the left, breathe, cry here, do this there. Then for me, it's like you are basically enclosing this person not to think.
Yeah, and not to be intuitive.
Of course.
Yeah, because it's a very intuitive production.
And Tony's brilliance is actually at experimenting with what it is that he wants to find out. He doesn't have the answer when he gets on stage.
Right.
He also wants this to surprise him. As much as, and that for me, that's the brilliance, because you don't have somebody who's saying, okay, before we get to stage, I'd like to try this way.
Right.
So it's where you are seeing somebody, this feels wrong, but I'm going to continue committing to it until I find the right kind of feeling. And it's important to have an actor who's a thinking actor, who trusts their own body, their own intuition, and also the space that they are getting into.
100%. It's important. And we got the pleasure of that, Tony, because 2 things happened. Someone's mobile phone was not off, right? You remember? After you had gone and sniffed her foot, then her phone went off later. And then my friend's son, when you ask a question of the audience, responded in a specific way. And what was really interesting that you wouldn't know is we were trying to think, okay, what's the right thing to say, you know? Because you're asking the audience and there was quiet. There was dead silence, like almost as if people felt sort of like the limelight had turned to them. And now the spotlight was suddenly on them because you were asking the question of us. And of course, it takes the youngest person, right, who is unaffected by what's going to be the politically correct response to just call out what was in their mind. And you went with it. And you went with it. And you didn't know what he was going to say.
Yeah, I mean that's become one of the signatures of the show, right? It doesn't limit itself. It's not pretentious about the things that must happen and the fact that they'll happen. We've had to be very malleable around how we make the show possible, first of all.
Right.
From a financial perspective, Phala is unable to travel with the work. So I travel alone, globally. And what I need to do when I travel is I need to get into whatever space that I'm in. I need to teach somebody the show. And then they need to run the lights or they need to support me in whatever way.
Really?
So yeah, so then that becomes an exercise of trusting and giving ownership to other people. So there's always been a kind of a dual ownership of the work in the way we've produced the work that I think also naturally has always been part of the way in which the work interacts with the audience. It's not a thing that I'm going to own on my own. I'm here to give this speech or this report to you, but it's also a conversation with you.
Yes.
So there's no way that you're just going to sit and watch me speak for an hour. No, it's where there are some points where we're going to be implicated in each other's lives.
I mean, the beauty of your collaboration is really coming out even more for me now, because you're revealing aspects of how you work that, you know, we wouldn't ordinarily know without having this conversation. And I think it is definitely testament to the trust that you have. And when you said you're like a brother now, I mean, it's a brotherliness that goes like almost beyond like a sibling, because it's a mutual understanding that comes in an emotional way, in fact, you know, psychological and emotional entanglement, if you like, over this particular production.
I mean, there's two things. I mean, when you talk about the moment of that question, in the beginning, when my thinking has always been, if you make theater, that does not cross, you know, the fourth wall into the audience.
Okay.
Then what happens is like, it feels almost like you're performing for yourself and not for and with the people. And this comes from, you know, a very African setting of what theater is.
Yes.
In an African way. Because if it doesn't cross that border, then really it becomes very aloof. So a lot of times when I do theater, I really question myself as to how do I broach the fourth wall in such a way that I don't lose my Africanness in the way that I think, in the way that I understand, you know, how we story ourselves as human beings. And at the height of this is that questioning has become problematic. To ask questions has become problematic. Part of it from our own African way of thinking, that, you know, this child is asking too much questions. It's very inquisitive, you know, and all that. There's that culture also of questioning that comes from. But also, even in the violence of education, if you're the child in the class who's asking the questions, at some point you're victimized for asking the questions. Yet the teacher encourages, you know, that they say this one asks too much.
Yeah.
You know,
let somebody else speak.
Yes,
let
exactly.
someone
It
else
becomes
speak.
all that. But at the thing is that to ask a question, you know, at any point in time is to make people uncomfortable. So one of the things that, you know, happens that is that, you know, we heighten that moment of what is to question and to start a conversation. So he literally asks a question and there's a stiffness in the audience.
Oh my goodness.
And then now he breaks that stiffness by saying, no, man, you guys have been chuckling. Why are you all of a sudden stiff when it comes to this?
Yes.
Because we're going to have a conversation.
Yes.
But that is something that always to say, the reason why we tell the story is so that we can re-story ourselves. It's not for just the ape, it's to broach that and to find a way. This is not something that Kafka has written in it. It's our own approach,
yes,
to understanding where we come from and the aesthetic that is uniquely African. It's about that. Our stories don't happen in a way that, we have a fourth wall in that kind of a way.
No, it's very interactive.
It's very interactive.
It's very interactive.
And as much so, and that is one of the reasons why in the piece, a phone moment like that, a person coming late, all those kind of things are part of the world.
Oh, yes, there was that as well,
We're not going to ignore the fact that something that is not supposed to happen is happening.
Yes.
So acknowledge it and move on.
Yes.
But it's not to acknowledge it to victimize the person.
No, it wasn't.
But it's to say, hey.
It wasn't.
Okay,
it wasn't.
Are you done? Are you finished?
Yeah.
And also even when you approach people, when the ape approaches people, they become uncomfortable. That question of, are you okay? Is also, it makes people calm. Because people are like, oh, what is he going to do?
What is he going to do to me?
Am I being victimized?
Yes. Will I be taken off onto the
Exactly.
stage? Should I be removed from my safe place into that other?
Yeah, it's also in understanding the nature of the text, lends itself to kind of an academic prowess that could easily become like a boring lecture. And I think one of the things that we found organically, and we've always been aware of, is how do we keep the buoyancy and the life in the text of the words that doesn't bore people, doesn't make people feel like you're talking down at them.
Yeah.
Because that's a very easy danger that you can slip into with this kind of work. When you read the text, it feels like blah, 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 blah. But
it's beautiful to me.
I'm
holding the book in my hand.
But for us, we just had to find a way. Is how do we constantly keep the connection and the energy between the audience and the performer alive?
Yes.
And it's in the text, it's in the breath, it's in the physicality, it's in the silences. Phala, one of the things we talked about after he saw we did the first run here is like there's an interesting thing about silences that I need you to think about and find here.
Yes.
And another thing around the imperfection of language. So now the thing that's happening that we're having fun with is deconstructing the language and finding the links between the ape language and the human language. And it's like, if I learned this thing, where are the moments of slippage? But that for the audience is an interesting thing.
But the moments of slippage, Tony.
Yeah.
Wow, the moments of slippage, because, sorry, Phala, it's just to say that when the language begins to become problematic for Red Peter, you can see it. And then there are those, you remember how he says that I have to suppress my apeness or something like that. Yeah. But then he can't get rid of it completely. But it comes out in such authenticity, and I just please hold your thought.
No,
because because I wanted to ask, did you watch documentaries or lots of footage on behavioral characteristics of apes?
So at the beginning of the show, what we did, I was boring him with a lot of links. I was interested in the structural build of an ape.
Yes.
So I sent him a lot of skeletons. We observed a lot of footage on different apes. From your normal apes in terms of the breeds that we know, your gorillas, your chimpanzees, to your bonobos, and we found a lot of information, quite interesting, information, such as, bonobos, solving everything with sex, arguments and stuff like that. Yeah, there is a breed
the
of
social hierarchy, the structure. is maintained and solved through sex. So the women are
and all forms of sex.
Yeah,
the women are the natural leaders.
Okay. Of the troops, but when there is conflict within the troop, it's solved through sex. And
people say makeup sex is really good, so I guess.
So there's that, and also it's like gay sex, straight sex in them.
Okay.
So we all these kind of things were there, but the mechanics of it was, now what do we do with this information? How do we, so it started breaking it down to say, how do we form an ape? So committing to ape behaviors, how the hands sit, the feet, and all those kind of things,
right,
which are the physical attributes of
right,
the ape. And then say, okay, if we do this, what is the human side of this? And also we know that we are using a human body. So it was almost like deliberately isolating everything to puppeteer the human body into the ape. And then we went into the voice. What is to find the voice of a very small ape, because this was a young ape, and then a grown ape, all those qualities of the sounds of the ape played a lot with that, and then the human. So there was a lot of deliberate breakdown of every single aspect of it, and then let these things come together and construct them in a way that kind of like, okay, so allocating this to pain, allocating that to excitement, all those kind of things were the things that we did. It required that, because otherwise then you'll have a situation where and this has been a lot of confusion that I've seen, where people think that apes and baboons are one and the same thing.
No.
So we were very specific around the kind of choices that we made, and that has helped the performance become what it has become. The choices we made were extremely deliberate, because there's no way you're going to tackle such a kind of a text that is quite dense, that is complicated and sophisticated in its languaging. And we understand that storying is about every aspect. That is why Tony earlier was speaking about what do we do with silences? What do we do with the kind of movement? How do we make sure that this movement remains true to this? So every single aspect of it is like, we need to think about it. And when the other thing happens, because there's a human and the ape, when we feel it becoming more human, it's just a reminder, this is becoming more human, make it ape-like. This is becoming more ape, make it human-like. All those kind of things become, the kind of like the plethora of choices that we need to make within, this plate that we are serving. And those kind of choices are the ones that the earlier work, I remember the first rehearsal when I came, because we used to play outside the rehearsal room. We'd go to the field, we'd run, we'd do, before we started rehearsals. And then, Tony would eat a banana and orange with, or give him an orange, eat it like an ape, all those kind of things. Then the first day
must
at
have
rehearsal,
been quite something.
The first day at rehearsal, here Tony comes, and his excitement is to show me, his ape-like movements. And he's jumping onto the tables, he's doing all those kind of things and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, that's so exciting. Do you have the text? And it's like, please don't punch my bubble, because right now I'm excited.
This is amazing, and I can't believe that we're almost out of time, but we are, because it's so fascinating. But before we go, and I just want to read something here. In your human, this is at the back of the book, Kafka's Ape, adapted by Ookeditse Phala, with contributions by Tony, Bonani, Miyambo. It's available on Amazon, and it's 56 pages. So there is no barrier for anybody to just read it and understand the text. It's really amazing. So there's something here. In your human world, you see only so much less, but you claim so much knowledge. This is Red Peter.
Yeah.
Experience is not what happens to someone, but what one does with what happens to them.
Yes.
Experience is not what happens to someone, but what one does with what happens to them. That line has been shadowing me since you spoke it, because my brain has turned it this way and that way, and I've fallen in love with it because I'm thinking to myself that we have similar experiences in life, but we have different responses to those similar experiences. You know, it could be very traumatic experiences, could be happy experiences, but what they bring out in individuals can be very different. And I think it allows us to have that latitude to understand and not to try and assume that everybody will see things your way.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not necessarily that their way is the wrong way, it's just how they experience the world. Yeah. So before we go, there are a couple of things we do here at Wasafiri Africa, and one of the things is that we like to talk about food. Yes, yeah.
I didn't see that one time.
So what kind of African food do you like? I mean, from South Africa, other parts of Africa?
Go.
Okay, I like buhobe.
What's bukoy?
Buhobe.
Bukobe. Okay.
Buhobe is sorghum porridge.
Oh, we call it ushurwa mogebe in my language.
All right. So it's made out of mabele.
Okay.
You know, which is sorghum. And I like that because I grew
Love
up
it.
in that. You know, and I like to have that with moroho, which is, you know, a relish. You know, so like, you know, your green,
Oh,
it's like spinach or something. Yeah, so basically like,
You have a porridge with your spinach.
yes,
Okay.
that's staple food. You know, in Botswana, you'll have moroho and buhobe.
I know that you can make like a pap or a salsa from it, because there are parts, you know,
Yes,
my
you can
dad
make-
used to like it as pap as well, not
Yeah.
just as porridge.
Yeah.
But you're saying that you'll take it as porridge with your
but
greens.
it will be a stiffer porridge. It won't be like your
Runny.
Your runny. Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
There's stages to that.
Okay.
You know, so yeah. So that's my favorite go-to.
Favorite go-to.
Yes.
Wonderful. Tony?
It's not a food.
Oh,
it's
what is
a
it?
food destination.
Yes, that's good. Tell us where
So
to go.
Mozambique
Ah.
is my culinary home. And
When you go there, you're like,
across the board. So, for example, there's a pumpkin seed, a pumpkin leaf, spinach.
Yes,
kind of
yes,
rice
yes,
that
we
they
have
do
that as well. Yes.
Yeah. With pumpkin, but they do it with fried sardines fresh off the fire.
Oh,
and
wow.
bap as well. So you can have that, or you can have a beautiful peri-peri roasted chicken, or a beautiful small pig, or you can get a prawn straight from the
Ocean,
sea
yes.
onto a fire,
Yes.
onto a plate.
Yes.
So that kind of life in Mozambique, and the connection, the pipeline between where the food comes from and how it ends up on your plate is one of my favorite things about Mozambique.
You know, the thing that we do also on Wasafiri Africa is we do, because Wasafiri means travelers off, and then Africa is Kiswahili. So one of the things we ask people where they would like to go. Of course, we know Tony goes to Mozambique now.
Yeah.
You know, that's his happy place when it comes to food. What about you, Phala? Are there places
There's
that
a
you like to
place
visit?
that I like to visit. It's Kiroera in, you know, Tanzania.
Kiroera
Yes,
in
there's
Tanzania.
In Tanzania,
Okay.
that part of, I mean, it's so okay. I'm interested in the equator line.
Okay.
So everywhere where the equator crosses is where I want to go.
Oh, you must go to Nyanyuki as well.
Yes, I want to know. I want to go anywhere where the equator passes, because I'm just fascinated by, you know, the coming from the Tropic of Capricorn.
Yes.
I'm like, I like the weather around the equator, and I'm jealous of the equatorial people in that
Oh,
setting.
I didn't even know that. We love you. Don't worry.
You know, so I'm very jealous of those people, because I feel like, you know, you've got the best weather in the world.
It is very
You know,
good
so,
weather.
yeah.
It is very
So-
good weather.
So that's one thing that I'm like, you know, why wasn't I born on
Oh,
the equator?
we'll adopt you. Don't
You know,
worry.
no, that's
You've
one
done
thing.
such a good job of adopting me here in the Tropic of Capricorn,
Yeah.
so we can return the favor.
The question I have for you is, do you guys in Kenya, do you have pounded meat?
Pounded meat,
Yes.
like mince meat.
No.
No.
Okay. So if you ask me,
Listen. Don't judge Kenyans.
No,
I
I'm
don't.
not judging
I
you.
don't need red meat.
No. I'm not judging us. Like if
It's
you
'cause I
if
might
you don't have a name for
misrepresent.
it, then I know that, you know, it might not be. So there's something we call siswa or chotlo in Setswana. which is like, pounded meat.
Okay.
And it's one of my favorite, alongside.
So do you like
Makhanda.
braai it? Do you put it on a barbecue?
No, you actually boiled it. You cook it, you start off boiling it and then frying it and then pounding it, and it becomes, very soft, juicy meat.
And then how do you eat it?
Oh gosh, so you can put it anywhere. So I can be your breakfast if you want it to be break. Can be your dinner. You can, after pounding it, you can mix it with anything, that you want. You can put,
Tony, are you seeing the excitement here?
Yeah,
you can put anything,
He needs to make it now.
I can make it,
Can you make it?
Yeah,
I think
do
you need to
make
give
it.
Tony a treat.
No, I will, yeah. It's one of those kind of things that I'm like, yes.
He's committed now.
Yeah.
No, I'm committed. Don't worry.
You're now
I will-
on record.
I'm actually going to cook it before this run ends.
This is a thing, right? Whenever I talk to people about food, it's like they go into another world. And one of my guests said, and I keep repeating this, that Africans should have used food as a weapon because we come together so strongly around food.
Yes.
It would have united us and would have saved ourselves a lot of trouble.
Of course.
And what music do you guys like?
Me, I'm a wide range of music.
Okay, well,
I
pick
listen
one
to-
or two.
I listen to anything that moves my soul. From
That's okay.
From your jazz to gospel, like I'm not a person of genre.
Yes,
I'm a person. Is it a good song?
yes.
So
from anywhere in the continent.
Anywhere in the continent, from Nigeria,
Yeah.
from Senegal,
Yeah.
I listen to anything that says, that resonates
Yeah,
with me.
it gets you moving.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I'm not a person who's, I'll listen to an amapiano song, I'll be good. I'll listen to some, a cappella, I'll be good. I mean, recently, I was just listening to Messi. She's a gospel artist from Nigeria.
Oh, okay.
It's such
You must send me.
Okay.
You must send me.
So those are the kind of, and she's such a good vibe, and the way that she sounds reggae and gospel the same time.
Yes.
I've listened to so I've been listening to that. I've been listening to some gospel from here, South Africa. I listen to anything that resonates with my heart at that time. I do. So music from anywhere. And also, like, and that's one of the reasons why I like TikTok so much, because then you'll have, links to songs.
Yeah.
That people are, yeah. So
And then you learn new
then
songs.
you learn the new songs, and then you do, so that's basically it. I mean, I'm a sucker for music.
Tony?
I'm a deep house fan.
Deep house fan.
Yeah.
Okay. You're very settled on that. It's like the Mozambican thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like musically I'm open, but like if I had to like distill my kind of space that is a space of comfort, a space of kind of also intellectualization, deep house is kind of I can listen to it, I can theorize, alongside it. Deep house is
So it just makes your mind go into a certain rhythm.
I used to DJ actually, and Phala and my partner, they were teasing me. I'm a failed DJ, so now my
You're doing very well, don't worry.
Anytime somebody says you're gonna fail, and Pala's learned this with the show, I always say I'm gonna show you. So I'm gonna resurrect my DJing career now. We might be having another podcast conversation.
That's it.
For my DJ.
Exactly, and
Enough
you
right
make
there.
sure you've cooked that meat
Yeah.
for him before. Yeah.
And this
Good,
is
good. What's that? Oh, look at this. Next level. You know what?
Feels like an
Phala is
outro.
moving. Phala is moving. He couldn't even help himself. Oh my God. Tony, Phala, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
No, we can see.
That is
That was,
Messi
I just loved what you did. I loved what you did there, and shout out to her. And I just love what you did. Thank you so much, both of you, for making the time.
Yes.
Break a leg tonight, and I don't know why we say that in theatre. It always bothers me.
My legs are a bit. One of the key worries.
Yeah, I asked you about that, didn't I? Because you're always on the balls of your feet the whole entire production.
I don't know how much longer I can keep doing that.
Oh my goodness! Look, I am very happy that I have seen you.
So he will be 60 and still doing it. Trust me.
Yeah. Don't worry, we'll come up with a way.
Much slower version.
Well, it will
Might
still
be 2 hours with an interval.
It will still be Red Peter. It will still be Red Peter. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us at Fury Africa. That was Phala and Tony, and the play, the amazing play, which the book is available on Amazon, is Kafka's Ape.
It is also available on Bloomberry, website as well.
Oh yeah, so it's available there. So until next time, Twendeni, Africa is ready.